Yo, this is a cool video.
Hello there and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to do
Yo.
something different and we're going to look at some unused classic WoW maps that could be used in Season.
To be clear, I'm not suggesting Asmongold do blackface. I'm not saying blackface. I'm saying an actual black woman. I'm not saying he should... Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
Discovery in future phases.
Shut up.
I love unused maps. I always find them so fascinating that there's so much work been put into them and then they just go unused. So yeah, there's about 6 or so unused maps and areas in the classic WoW files that we can take a look at in this video. But before we jump into that, guys, I just want to shout out my Twitch, twitch.tv/MrGM. If you want to see me stream World of Warcraft, Dragonflight PTR, Season of Discovery, and more, over on twitch.tv/MrGM every single day. All right, so yes, Season of Discovery is most definitely underway. We are currently in Phase 2 of Season of Discovery, with the level cap being currently level 40, and in the future it will be 50, and then 60, and then who knows what happens. I think they're probably just going to do more content for level 60, and so far people have really enjoyed Season of Discovery, myself included. Phase 1 was super fun going into BF.
Phase 2 is a little bit rough right now. Do you guys feel that? I feel like there is not a whole lot to do in Phase 2. I've got my one character, and I've kind of done everything I need to do on my Warlock. I have my Boomkin. There's a couple more things I need to do, but really, like, if you're not the type of person that wants to just play a bunch of alts, you're gonna run out of stuff to do. If you're a one character Andy, you're gonna run out of shit to do pretty fast, I think. And I actually can't even blame people for only wanting to be one character Andys in Phase 2, because leveling from 25 to 40, you know, over and over again is like not really that compelling. It's not really that compelling.
FD as a raid, and then obviously in Phase 2 we now have Gnomergan. However, there are a bunch of unused maps.
My Exalted Wrathy Basin. I am a little bit into Revered with the Wrathy Basin, and I have like 6 months to get Exalted, right? Because you don't even need to think about Exalted until you're 60. There's no 40 rewards, there's no 50 rewards, so it's not really a time-sensitive issue.
In the classic WoW files that I would love to see as raids or dungeons or just kind of areas that we could go to, because, you know, they are still vanilla WoW zones, they're just ones that were just unused and are literally in the classic era files. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these. So the first one is Scarlet Monastery. Now you're probably thinking, what do you mean? We already have Scarlet Monastery. So this is a map called Unused Monastery, and this is actually all of the Scarlet maps put together. This is one of my favorite unused maps in the vanilla WoW files. So the layout of this map is really interesting. The instance portal is at the bottom of the stairs in the outside area of Scarlet Monastery. This is actually where the start of the dungeon or raid would be. Obviously from there you'd go up the stairs through the area where you'd go into your specific instance, but in this case the doors to Armory and Cathedral are open and they lead to a corridor. They actually lead to the same corridor. So going down this corridor and taking a left will take you to an outside area which resembles the Houndmaster Loxi boss area from Library, the boss with the hounds obviously, and that is just an exact replica of that. From this area you go down a short corridor and then you end up in Herald's room from Armory. You actually end up on the bottom floor of this area, so you'd imagine another boss would be here, and from there you can head up these stairs at the back of the room, which will lead into another corridor. Now from here you end up at a crossroads. You could either go left or you can go right. Going left resembles the first part of the graveyard instance in Scarlet Monastery, and then down another corridor into another kind of outside.
I don't think this is going to be a good raid, and I'm talking like architecturally. I don't think having 10 people stand right here where the ceiling is so low, I don't think this is going to lend. This environment does not lend itself to a good raid. And also, we've already been through this zone 10 trillion times. I don't know. I'm like this really doesn't get me so excited. I hate to say.
It's in Scarlet Monastery, and then
if they want to make an awesome raid, they should reuse Hearthglend or Tyr's Hand. That's what they should do. They should make an instance out of Hearthglend or Tyr's Hand or something like that. That would be fucking awesome. That would be cool.
Down another corridor into another kind of outside boss area, kind of similar to the Houndmaster area, but a little bit different here, a little bit more open, and yeah, you'd imagine a boss would just kind of be in the middle of this section. Now, if you go back to that crossroads and hit a right, you'll actually go down a corridor that exactly resembles Scarlet Library, and going right out of there will actually take you through a short corridor, and then into the Cathedral area. Yeah, an area that exactly resembles the Cathedral, where you'd find Mograine and Whitemane and things like that, and that would be the end of the dungeon or raid. So it's pretty awesome. As mentioned, it is all of the Scarlet Monasteries all amalgamated into one. I'd imagine in development, they probably made this and then they were like, you know what, this is way too long for a dungeon.
Too big.
Let's split it up into 4 and create, what we have right now. But this would be such a fun raid to have in Season of Discovery. I'd love to see what they could do with it. They could like remaster all of those bosses and just make them super fun and add some new gear in there and whatnot. I think it'd be really great as a Scarlet Monastery raid, and I've always wanted it. It's as I said, it's been in the game file since Vanilla WoW, and it's just a really visually nice area and how it seamlessly goes into all of the Scarlet Monasteries. They did also do a little bit of a Scarlet Monastery tease at BlizzCon, so I don't know if this was referring to that as of right now.
I really hope they don't do this. I really hope that they just don't shove a raid inside of this giant SM instance. I think that would be a colossal mistake. They should not do that.
As of the recording of this, we haven't had any sort of Scarlet Monastery changes so far, so not sure what's going on with that. But Scarlet Monastery, or the unused monastery map, definitely one of my favorites and definitely something I would love to see in Season of Discovery in the future. The next area is called Stormwind Prison in the game files, also known as the Stormwind Vault. So this is the dungeon attached to the island area in Stormwind that is like kind of fully gated off. And this is kind of a raid version of the Stockades. So this is actually incredible.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Tolbarad raid. What was that raid called? Where there was like the giant pit lord boss. This is from Cataclysm. It kind of looks like that.
Incredible. So much work has gone into this, which is really surprising that it was never used. So the layout of this is essentially 2 floors. There are 2 floors to this stockades.
Yes, they
are.
So
as you come into the entrance, you're at a cross section, and going left will kind of take you down an area that exactly resembles the stockades, and going forward will also take you down a corridor that resembles the stockades. The only difference you'll notice here is there are some grates on the floor, which you can actually see down into the floor below, which we're going to go to in a second. So if you go back to the start of the entrance and go right, this is where it gets a little bit different. So down here, you'll see various prisons, but from there, it goes even lower. You'll have areas like a solitary confinement prison, and obviously your standard prisons that you did see in the stockades. But as you continue down these long corridors, you can look up through the grate that we just saw earlier, and from that area, it will actually lead into kind of a large boss area that we've never seen in the stockades. So this is like a new area that was designed, presumably for a boss. Now, from this area goes into my favorite room, and this is where I would presume would be the last boss of this dungeon or raid. So this is a massive open area with a really tall roof and pillars all around the room, so that you could just imagine
it looks like what kind of boss
fight you could have in here. Maybe a dragon, maybe a demon, maybe something crazy could definitely be confined in this sort of like massive prison of the stockades. And again, this is a design we've never seen before in the stockade. So it's really cool to see all of this work being done, but never used. This is just such an easy win for Blizzard to, spawn this, make a little story out of it. Obviously, the only issue here is like with...
So far, we've had BFD, which is a repurposed dungeon. We've had Nomuragon, which is a repurposed dungeon. I don't really want to continue with repurposed dungeons. We've been to Stockades, man. We've done Scarlet Crusade. We did know, I want new areas that we have never really had content in, right? Maybe that's asking a bit too much. I don't want to spend 3 months doing fucking stockades. I don't want to spend 3 months doing Scarlet. We've already done that, dude. I don't know.
With the Horde, how did the Horde end up here?
I don't know,
How would they
man.
get there? But that's something they could figure out. I think this area would just be such an awesome kind of stockades raid or mega dungeon, or something like that. So yeah, Stormwind Vault, a very interesting zone that was just never used in Classic WoW. The next area is less of a dungeon or raid and more of a questing zone or an area that you could just kind of hang out in. And this is the Emerald Dream. Yeah, that probably sounds familiar because we've been to the Emerald Dream in patch 10.2 of Dragonflight. But yes, there is a vanilla WoW version of the Emerald Dream. There's actually kind of 2 areas to this zone.
Would take a lot of
super
work.
Unfinished and very green, so sorry about your retinas on this one. So the first area is the Verdant Fields. Now this is a super unfinished area with swirly floor patterns and massive colorful plants all spawned around this area. It's an absolutely massive area. You may have seen this in some old exploration videos and things like that. And this is certainly an area that you can see that they started to design, but obviously didn't eventually continue it. And then, even now in 10.2, some of the swirly floor designs and some of the ideas from this have actually been used in 10.2, which I really like as like kind of a throwback there. The second area is the Emerald Forest. So this is where you're going to find a lot of floating trees. This model was always really cool and never reused as far as I'm aware. There's a couple rivers around this area, as well as a Dreamcatcher, which is awesome. I believe they use the Dreamcatcher further on in Legion. And you'll also find like a big statue of a man. I don't know who this man is, but if you recognize it, you probably would have seen it in 10.2 because they did reuse it in patch 10.2. So two areas to the Emerald Dream, the Emerald Forest and the Verdant Fields. Extremely green, extremely unfinished, but certainly somewhere that they could finish or use in the future.
I don't know to what degree the Classic team right now has the capacity to do like zone design. I don't know if they have enough time or if they have the resources or the skills or the I don't know if they are able to like fill up a zone and do terrain editing and terrain modeling. I don't know if they can do that.
Sure, but obviously with 10.2 having the Emerald Dream, perhaps it wouldn't be something they'd want to do. But yeah, it's just another unfinished zone of Vanilla WoW. The next area is actually something that the devs actually teased at BlizzCon. So this is the Karazhan Crypt. So this is not a new map ID. This is actually in the outside world, but obviously you could convert it into like a dungeon or raid or just an outside area perhaps. So this is actually outside of Karazhan, down in the crypts, and this has been in the game since Vanilla WoW. It's like an underground graveyard with various tunnels and areas where you'd have bodies and undead and things like that, but
this is probably the most exciting out of any of these prospects here, because we haven't really done anything in this area. Of course, you might have Death skipped through the gate and sort of ran around and taken a look, but we've never actually done content here. We have done content in the Stockades. We have done content in Scarlet Monastery, and that's all reused. This is probably the most compelling. Yes, guys, I know servers are up. I understand. We're going to finish the video. Thank you.
Just goes lower and lower into these like vast areas of like water and stone and various like bone piles and things like that. It's a really incredible area, honestly, and it's so massive that honestly it would really work well as a raid. There's also an underwater grave in this area with some very questionable art assets that are pretty horrific, honestly. But yeah, this is kind of the
Do you think they would get rid of these? If they end up turning the Karazhan Crypts into a dungeon or raid, do you think that they would get rid of these things? No? I don't know, dude.
Underwater area of that, which will open up into like a giant area which could potentially house like a final boss of this. There's also a really cool bit at the start that I really like in the Karazhan Crypt. So if you just go slightly left, you just fall down this hole and you end up in another area of the crypts, which is actually really cool. But Karazhan Crypts, certainly an area
I've never dude, I've been to the crypts like 10 times. I've never seen this part.
Also a really cool bit at the start that I really like in the Karazhan Crypt. So if you just go slightly left, you just fall down this hole and you end up in another area of the crypts, which is actually really cool. But Karazhan Crypts, certainly an area I would probably expect to be a raid rather than a dungeon, but I guess we'll have to see. As said, it was teased at BlizzCon, so we probably will see it at some point during Season of Discovery. The next area we're going to talk about is not a dungeon or raid. It is actually a battleground, and if you were to categorize it, I would categorize it as an epic battleground, and this is a Shara Crater. So this is a huge unused battleground area that was being developed during Vanilla WoW, it seems. Obviously with the name, as you'd imagine, it's designed very similar to a Shara, but it is a unique design in the way that it's laid out. Much like other battlegrounds, you have an alliance base, a horde base, and a battle area in the center. So let's start off by talking about the alliance base. Now it is Night Elf themed, as you'd imagine, and actually it's really cool here because you have this very narrow gate to enter the Night Elf base. So obviously you'd imagine some really epic PvP could happen here. Now, as mentioned, this is extremely unfinished, so there's a lot of like texturing and areas that are just not done at all, but all of the buildings have been kind of sprouted in this area, with the barracks being in the middle, having various watchtowers and a cave to the side as well, which is actually really cool. The area around the alliance base and around the map actually really reminds me of like a Warfront. This would actually really work nicely as a Warfront map. It's a shame Warfronts didn't really end up as we expected. Moving over across the map to the Horde base now, you have the main barracks on the hill, like the big Horde barracks where you'd imagine like the end boss will be or something like that, but the majority of this is Tauran architecture with a few little orc ones here and there. The Horde base definitely seems a little bit more unfinished than the Alliance here. To get into the base, you have a bridge over a dried river, like a Tauran bridge, and
couldn't you just run... what is the point of the bridge? Because you could just go, you could just go below it, right?
A Tauron bridge, and you also have a smaller barracks at the back. Now, it doesn't seem to have a cave similar to the Alliance area here, but as mentioned, this area seems a little bit more unfinished than the Alliance base. Now, as mentioned, there is a kind of like battle area in the middle, and absolutely the best part of this zone is the centerpiece, and it is the two massive dragon statues. Now, one of them is intact, and one of them is destroyed, and this is a design that we did see on the Dragon Isles as well. Now, as far as I'm aware, this has not been used in the game files in Vanilla WoW, but yeah, these two dragon statues are absolutely incredible looking, and it's just such a shame that this area was just not used at all. This would be such a fun way to add something new to Season of Discovery, but still having that Vanilla WoW art style and feel as this was designed in original Vanilla WoW, and they could just kind of finish off the area. It doesn't need a ton of work. There's just some texturing and spawning that...
You know what they should do? This is not a dungeon, this is not a raid, this is not, I don't know. At some point in Season of Discovery, we should be able to, like, teleport. Guess where I'm going to say? Where am I going to say we should go? We should be able to go to GM Island. At some point, for some reason, for some quest line, for some purpose, we should go to GM Island. That would be kind of cool. There's some vendor or something we can do there. Let's log in. Oh, hold up. Oh, no, we're not done. Yo, we're not done. Hold up. Yo, I thought we were done.
It needs to be done, but for the most part, this area is essentially done, and it is a very, very cool, epic battleground. And it seems like, in each phase, you have, the Ashenvale thing, the Stranglethorn thing, and then maybe down the line, you could have the Ashara Crater battleground. But yeah, Ashara Crater, definitely one of the cooler zones that is unused in the Vanilla WoW files. And finally, I'm not going to go too much into this one because it's kind of obvious. There's actually the Escape from Durnhold and Black Morass maps in the Vanilla WoW files. Yeah, they've been in the game since Vanilla. Obviously, these dungeons did turn up in Burning Crusade, so probably not something they would use as it was eventually used anyway. But yeah, the Black Morass and Escape from Durnhold in the exact form that you saw them in the Burning Crusade has actually been in the game since the birth of World of Warcraft, which is actually really interesting. I wonder what the plan was there. Obviously, the Caverns of Time also locked off in Vanilla WoW, but they did eventually open that up in Burning Crusade as well, so yeah, not too sure. But yeah, I thought I'd just mention the Caverns of Time dungeons here at the end just for funsies. So if they want to add those, why not? But I don't think it'd be that special as they're already been used.
Maybe I have a steep request. I want new zones. I want new leveling zones. I want new max level end game 60 resource farming zones. I want new zones. I want new zones. That's what I want. Give it to me. Let's log in.